up on the program from Ireland, we have Jamie and Con, co-founders of along with Michael and the other Michael, co-founders of the Mental Wellbeing Stuttering Awareness of Ireland. Take it away, Jamie and Con.
Thanks, Tom. And Con, are you made a co-host?
Yes, I am. I think so. Yes, I can see a share screen option available to me. So yeah.
Perfect. So I am delighted to introduce Con Hurley, who is the co-founder of Stuttering Awareness Mental Wellbeing Ireland. Con is a teacher in County Cork, which is in the south of Ireland, and has 20 plus years experience. He is very passionate about the student voice and has always recognized the importance of supporting the mental well-being of the student and the right for people who have a stutter to be fully included in education. Con and his colleague Breda Cody are a big reason why I made it to university. So thank you for all your help, Con. Con was my mathematics teacher 13 years ago, and to this day we are still friends, and we're delighted to have him on board with us as our education outreach officer. And over to you, Con.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Now, I'm just, I would almost say a health and safety notice first. I have a wonderful laptop generally, so hopefully you're seeing something at the moment. It has moments where it decides to have a mind of its own. So just be patient with me from time to time. I'm just going to hide some pictures here. So hello from Ireland. So I've just been listening to some absolutely inspirational stories. So to Ahmed's story and to Cynthia's story, and it resonates so very much with I suppose lots of what I've been hearing over the last couple of years since I became involved with Stuttering Awareness Mental Wellbeing Ireland. As you can see, I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher, as Jamie said, for over 20 years. As well as teaching, I lead and develop a lot of CPD programs, so continuous professional development for teachers. It's something I got into, I suppose, just before the pandemic when I was looking for other ways to exercise my brain. And I really enjoyed doing that. And I suppose most importantly for me, I'm passionate about education. And just coming from the background that I do, I suppose I was strongly influenced by my mother, whose family wouldn't have been very wealthy, and so education was limited. It was all education in Ireland wasn't free until the 60s, and but she always appreciated the power that education had to transform lives, and that has run through my family for a few generations, and it's certainly impacted on me. I'm delighted and so proud to be a co-founder of Stuttering Awareness Mental Wellbeing Ireland, and for me, I am surrounded by people who overcome so much and are just strong and inspirational people that just leave me staggered on a regular basis. And I'm delighted to be able to sort of input into this work. So in terms of education, I'm still kind of feeling my way in terms of how Stuttering Awareness Mental Wellbeing Ireland can influence education policy or education thinking in Ireland. So I'm going to share with you some ideas. I'm going to share with you some directions that we're going in. I'm going to share with you some inspiration and some thinking. And I would ask you as well to be patient. I'm not sure what time zones you're all in. I can see you're from everywhere. It's 10:30 at night here now. So if the brain is a little foggier, then it would normally be just be patient with me, please. And hopefully you're all able to hear me pretty well. I've learned to slow down my West Cork accent because I lived abroad for many years and fully appreciate that if I go full native, that only those closest to me will fully understand what I'm saying. So hopefully I'm coming through loud and clear to you this evening. So I suppose first thing is, if we think about what good teachers should be able to do, and I'm fully aware that every child out there, those who stutter and those who don't, will come into contact with teachers. And the teachers have the ability to transform lives or to cause serious chaos in a child's life. And when I think of what good teachers are, good teachers will always consider two key things. First of all, they'll consider the person who's in front of them. And secondly, they'll consider their own professional practice. And when they're considering that person in front of them, they'll think about what I would call the holistic nature of the learner. So yes, you're engaged with learning a subject, so in my case, mathematics and physics, but at the same time, when you're in that learning environment, you're learning about the wider world and you're learning about your place in that world. And all of these inputs, all of these learning experiences are surrounding you all at the one time. As well as that, when a teacher is considering the person in front of them, they'll consider the importance of the student's well-being. And there'll be certain indicators that we'll want to check in with or to have running in the back of our mind the whole time when we're considering student well-being. And for me, students' ability to be resilient, and my goodness, people who live with a stutter, what resilience they have on show, to be respected and for that respect to be demonstrated in a number of different ways, and for there to be awareness. In terms of professional practice, there's very similar. There's the holistic nature of learning, so a wide range of curriculum activities, and I would have serious skin in this game. One of the areas that I lead CPD in quite a lot is group learning, and I suppose for lots of us, when we were going to school as children, learning was all about rote learning, and you had a sort of question and answer back and forth with the teacher. And I'm not sure if any of you are involved in education, but certainly teaching has changed, and an awful lot more teaching now, certainly in the Republic of Ireland, but I would imagine best practice in so many countries involves group learning. So students are engaged with group activities and activities where they become a spokesperson, activities where they're a spokesperson within a group or a spokesperson to the teacher for the group. Lots of activities where interaction is involved, and excuse me, whether it is co-curricular or extracurricular or just wide different areas of engagement, that has to be considered by a teacher the whole time in what they do. And finally, empowering students to be active agents in their own learning. And this is such a new one for teachers. I mean, when I was training more than 20 years ago, the idea of officially giving students a voice or a say in their education was unheard of. And, I suppose instinct would carry me certain places, and giving students a voice or giving a student a say always seemed sensible to me. And it trumped other instincts that I might have. The first time I came across students with a stutter, it was working in England. I was working in Birmingham at the time. I qualified in Ireland, but there weren't any jobs immediately. So I went to work in England, which was an easy and sensible option to do, and a wonderfully enjoyable experience. But first students that I came across that had a stutter, I suppose with so many of us, it's all about instinct. But when it comes to student voice, and when it comes to, I suppose finding a basis for how we operate, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child from 1992 gives students that voice, the right to a voice. But for those for whom fluency is an issue, or for those for whom silence is an expectation inside in class, this takes on, for me, an added significance. So every child out there, all the wonderful kids and the couple of scamps that are sitting in front of me as well, they all have a right to a voice. But for most of them, it's natural, and it goes without any questioning. But for that tiny cohort, for whom fluency is an issue, that student voice takes on so much more significance. Okay, now the title to this slide, I think, is very important for me, because teachers can be a problem here, and 9 out of 10 times it's inadvertently. But when we're dealing with teachers as a problem, there's two areas to look at here. And when I say as a problem, I mean not making life as easy as it could be for students who stutter. So when we're dealing with personality, we're talking about the values and dispositions of the teacher. And when we're dealing with perceptions, it's about the teacher's perception of what is appropriate and the teacher's perception of what is necessary. And I suppose I'm going to talk about some of these points, and I'll just share some reflections with you on them. I'm going to say up straight as well, I haven't undertaken any research on this. I am a teacher inside in a classroom back in on Monday. And so I'm going to share with you, I suppose, what I know, what I've observed, what I've gleaned from talking to colleagues and doing professional development with teachers, and gleaned what I've learned from talking to people who live with a stutter. And so I'm just going to share those with you. And I suppose when we're thinking about those perceptions, I think myself, this is where I suppose I as a teacher and the teaching community can have the biggest effect, or can cause most change. Okay, so first of all, if we look at teachers' perceptions of those who stutter, and secondly, what is the right thing to do when a student presents with a stutter? So when we're dealing with teachers' beliefs about those who stutter, it was just very, very interesting listening to Cynthia talk there a few moments ago. And Cynthia was talking about the perceptions of those people in Paraguay and perhaps in other places as well. And this is the very negative perceptions of somebody's intellectual ability and how that's linked with stuttering. I'm aware that could be the case. I have to say I've never actually come across it. I'm not going to go down that road, only because I'm not certain of I suppose I can't speak with authority in that area, because it's something that is just, I've never ever come across it. I've read about it slightly, and it sends chills down my spine. And to be honest, when I'm dealing with teachers and when I'm dealing with training teachers, I suppose the one thing that I would always stress and I would always push is that no teacher has the right to an ego. And when we're inside in the classroom, we have to take the ego out of everything that we do. Now, teachers are known for their egos, so you'll be patient with me and perhaps give me a nice smile when you think about the what I'm saying. But we cannot afford to have an ego. There'll be 20, 25, 30 people sitting in front of us, each of whom will have their own ego. And we have to take ourselves out of that. We're there to provide a service. And I don't mean that in some sort of utilitarian, Dickensian kind of version, but we're there to provide support. We're there to make lives better. We're there to open doors, or to provide the keys for people to open doors in the future. And I suppose I'm teaching long enough now that I love and really enjoy the surprise that I get when, it's a little bit like unwrapping presents on Christmas Day. You get these students in front of you, they turn up. In Ireland, we start secondary school at the age of 13. So these kids appear and you just don't know what they're going to become. And by the time they get to 18, a lot is unwrapped. And then you see them as grown men and grown women, and even more has happened. So no teacher by rights should have preconceived ideas about any student, because you're doing them the most terrible disservice to have preconceived ideas about kids who present with a stutter. That's verging on the criminal in my eyes. So when we're talking about the what's the right thing to do, the quote that always comes to mind, and I used this last year or earlier on this year or it was last October for the World Stuttering Awareness Day. And Winston Churchill, great reputation throughout the world, funnily enough, wouldn't be very highly regarded in Ireland at all because of his actions as Home Secretary back in the 1920s when Ireland was becoming independent, but was a great man for a quote. And he, around the time of the Second World War, some lady asked him, how did he know what was the right thing to do? And, Churchill in pure style said back to her, "Madam, it's not about doing the right thing. It's about not doing the wrong thing." And when teachers are working with students, I suppose it's very important for us to not do the wrong thing and just to be aware of what is the right thing to do the whole time. So when we're looking at what is the right thing to do, what I suppose it's good for teachers to think about what informs our actions and our reactions. So one of the things that teachers tend to do is avoidance. they try and avoid. Now, I'm not saying all teachers, but certainly it is an instinct, and it's an instinct that I come across from time to time when dealing with teachers, because with Stuttering Awareness Mental Wellbeing Ireland, I do feel calls from, principals, deputy principals, or year heads from time to time, especially year heads, who will have a student in their year group who will have a stutter, and they'll want to kind of know, well, what should I do, or how do I go about it, or how do I support that student? And that student will have gone through a couple of years, typically in that secondary school, before a year head will come along and will want to act on it. And avoidance is a key thing the teachers go to, and they avoid that, first of all, because of the personal discomfort, sort of the embarrassment of having to deal with somebody who has a stutter. And I suppose I'm just being very upfront now with some of the reactions that I've picked up or learned or observed over the years. And I mean, I suppose other people, when they are avoiding engaging with a student who has a stutter, it's coming from a good place. It's coming from a protect. They want to avoid embarrassing the student, or they feel the student should be embarrassed. Now, there's a lot to be read into that as well, but they feel the students should be embarrassed, and so they tend to kind of, I won't ask you. So another one to think about as well is sympathy, and a desire to accommodate the student, that possibly the student's desire not to be asked to speak or not to be asked to read in class. And from time to time, I come across students who would prefer, whose parents will ring in and will prefer not to be asked to read or not to be asked to answer a question. And I suppose as I've grown in confidence over the years, I've learned how to deal with that particular I suppose scenario, for want of a better phrase. So with Stuttering Awareness Mental Wellbeing Ireland, we have 3 guiding principles that inform and are really hopefully beginning to inform what we do and what drives us on as we engage with different education partners in Ireland. The first of those is inclusion. The second of those is student well-being. And the third of those is student voice. Okay, and all 3 of those, almost think of them as lenses that I'm trying to encourage teachers, the Department of Education, sort of professional development bodies to examine practice through. And Jamie has often reminded me, that 1% of the student population, or 1% of the world population, live with a stutter. It's so easy to forget that 1%, but one of the observations that I made, having first learned that statistic, is there isn't a school, I would say, there isn't a school in the country, there isn't a school on the planet that proudly shouts from the rooftops that it will look after 99% of its students. They claim to look after 100% of their students. Certainly schools in Ireland will push big for inclusion, will push big now these days for student well-being. And student well-being receives almost as many curriculum hours as maths does. So, that's certainly worth thinking about. And student voice has taken on a massive significance in Ireland in the last couple of years, certainly in the last maybe 7 or 8 years. So in some senses, I'm pushing against an open door. Life is slightly easier for me. But at the back of my mind the whole time is, when I'm looking at these 3 guiding principles, is how can this improve the lives of a small group of students who have amazing abilities. Ahmed talked about his superpowers, and these superpower children who really deserve to be considered and to be supported and to be allowed to flourish along with their peers. So when I'm dealing with inclusion, when I'm dealing with student well-being, and when I'm dealing with student voice, I always have in mind people who stutter, young people who stutter. So just to take a little closer look at inclusion, the 1994 UNESCO's Salamanca Statement. I started teaching in 1999, or I did my teacher training in 1999. So this was still quite fresh at the time. I think they had a 25th anniversary, re-meet a couple of years ago. I suppose I haven't had a chance to delve into any new reports. So I'm clinging to what I know, and I'm clinging to what I know that works. And there are 3 essential ideas that I've gleaned from that quite a long time ago. And I've distilled for myself that report Salamanca statement down into 3 key ideas. That all children have the right to a high quality education. I don't think anybody can dispute that. That the primary role of every school is to maximize the opportunity for each and every child to reach his or her respective potential. So each child, not the 99%, but the 100%. And that we as educators, as teachers, that we're never fully aware of what students are actually capable of. But it's our duty, it's our job to create the right conditions for them, so we nurture them and they will achieve to our potential, whether it's during their time in our care or else we give them the tools, and when they go off into the wider world, they'll be in a good place to fly. And it absolutely sends chills down my spine when I was listening to Cynthia's story about the little boy who took his own life. And it's just, it's the responsibility and onus upon schools to look after kids is paramount, and it frightens the life out of me. For those 3 essential ideas, they're enacted for me, from my own personal viewpoint, in 2 places. And one of those is in the school community. And you can look at community in as broad a sense as you want. So it is, for me personally, it is, being able to participate with your peers, with your teachers, with the everybody from the caretakers to the people who run the local sweet shop, 5 minutes outside the school, and being able to participate fully in all of the community activities, whether it's a school play, whether it's a school concert, whether it's a memorial service or a school religious service, that you're as likely to be part of that and to feel part of that as anybody else in the school. And then the most obvious one is inside in lessons, and what you're going to experience there and what your learning experience is going to be like. With well-being, I suppose, again, just referenced it there a few minutes ago with Cynthia's story, but the stories of the mental health impacts of the reactions to stuttering. So again, my understanding, and this is somebody who doesn't have a stutter and is in many respects looking in from the outside, but the stories that I've heard, they've all been about people's reactions to how they were treated and how that has triggered mental health, I suppose, impacts, negative impacts. And it's really, really important when we're considering well-being, that people feel, and I've just jotted down some of these here today, connected to their classmates, to their peers, to their teachers, respected, included, valued. And the key one here, and you'll forgive the poor English, but not different. Why should somebody be made to feel different? Just because their speech is going to take that little bit longer, it is totally, utterly unacceptable. So how can we help? Well, one of the things I'm pushing for with the support of Jamie and the Michaels is that a drive to focus on or to target 5 particular groups in the education community. Okay, and the first of those people who are working in 3rd level, and this, I think, we're really going to get places with in the next couple of years. So one of those places, or one of those, is going to be connections that we're building between universities in Ireland and universities abroad. And I suppose it's about building on each other's experiences and developing new understandings of how people who stutter can be supported. What new, I suppose, applications for science are there that we don't yet know about, and about pooling that understanding, which is hopefully going to take off. And the second one, I suppose, there would be, well, where do we all receive our teacher training but at university? So it's about universities upping their game, for want of a better phrase. And when they're dealing with all the different issues and all the different things that teachers have to consider, that stuttering is in there in terms of teachers are prepared to help students with stutter reach their potential and make sure that they're included in class, that their voice is heard, to make sure that their well-being is supported and not harmed by the actual reactions of the teacher. So our second of our target groups are those training to become teachers. I suppose this is first and second one here linked quite closely together. And the third one, current serving teachers. And these are the guys like me who've been out for quite a long time, and will come across a student who stutters probably once in a blue moon. The fourth one are current serving school leaders. And there's a definite, I suppose, cohort here that influence how we act in school and how we take part in our everyday practice. And finally, working with students and teachers. I should actually say, I'm sorry, working with students and parents. I typed that incorrectly. And this matters as well, because if we're there talking about student voice, then surely teachers' approaches to stuttering should be informed by, informed by the thoughts or the opinions of students who actually live with a stutter. So of those third level institutions, building links between universities I've spoken about, teacher training programs, and school leadership programs. So for example, if I take University College Cork, the local university, about 160 years old, maybe 40 minutes up the road from me, they have a master's, an excellent master's in school education leadership, and different aspects or different domains of school leadership is mentioned, and stuttering doesn't feature in it in any way, shape, or form, or an awareness of of the importance of teachers' reactions. And it's certainly something that it literally just needs to be dropped in into the maelstrom of different areas and topics that wannabe principals and wannabe deputy principals actually have to consider, because student voice is an obvious, inclusion is an obvious, student mental well-being for students is an obvious, and for staff, and yet it's not on leadership programs agendas at present. So working with trainee teachers, and this is very important. This is about reframing natural instincts that teachers have to protect. And like, I suppose I remember, back in Birmingham, and a student opening a door for me, and I, nodded, and I said thank you, and I waited for the student to say thank you back, and it was very obvious that the student was having an issue saying, you're welcome. And I stood my ground and I waited until the student had said you're welcome. I wasn't going to go just nod and walk off. There's this small episodes like that stay with me. I'm not sure why one instinct trumped another, because I fully understand teachers' instincts to not want to embarrass a student, but my thinking would always be, well, what am I missing out on if I don't hear that student? And I wouldn't be alone in thinking that, but certainly that's what I would do. So if we can, when we're dealing with trainee teachers, the idea would be to reframe their natural instincts to protect by making them aware of the powers of their actions. And if they opt to avoid, if they head for avoidance strategy for whatever reason, that all they're doing is reinforcing the stigma that's associated with being different and the sense of isolation that I've learned that people who live with a stutter, kids who live with a stutter, can experience. So I suppose second to that, I think probably every country on the planet, virtually everyone, has a series of standards that teachers are expected to meet, and that some reference, if possible directly, but certainly indirectly, needs to be made, so that when teachers are being evaluated, or when trainee teachers are being evaluated for their, in their professional practice, that there's some area where when they come across a student who has a stutter, that they have an appropriate approach to that student to support them. With serving teachers, I suppose, first of all, there is a reminder that it's not about us. And I suppose serving teachers, we're a very strange crowd. Once we're a little bit like, I suppose, lots of four-legged animals who, emerge fully formed from the womb the minute we're, launched into our classroom. We're suddenly these little mini gods, in some cases, but it's not about us. It really isn't. And that's the first reminder here. So what I think is best, I don't want to embarrass them. The parents would prefer it if we just didn't say anything. That isn't an approach I think that holds water. And it's certainly one that I would call into question very quickly. And so what we have to do instead is to encourage teachers to think of students. And that's easy to do, actually. And we spend most of our time thinking about students. So, and just making sure that they're happy and they're learning and they're working with us and not against us. But these are my ones that I would, sort of have in the back of my mind. Don't give up on me. Give me extra time. Be fair to me. Don't avoid me. Don't ignore me. Give me a chance to speak, to persuade, to question, to answer, and stress that everyone is different. So, if a student has a stutter, then, okay, well, somebody else has red hair. Somebody else we're all different. Every single one of us is different. So that might be one that holds water in terms of stressing that. But this is not exclusive, and I'm sure I'll think of other ones, and somebody may ring me up later and say, for goodness sake, take that one out. But I think, are teachers willing to give students who stutter the time to persuade them or to persuade other students in a group? Because if you are prepared to do that, if you're willing to do that, then that's absolutely powerful and sends a powerful message to students. Be fair to me. Are you being fair to me by allowing me to sit in silence and never ask me anything? Are you being fair to me by finishing my sentences for me? And I suppose one other one that I would add in there as well, I wouldn't put it into that box, but I'd certainly have an arrow coming off at the side, would be my thought process, I've just actually forgot what I was going to say, so I'll just carry on. It'll come to me again in a minute. I'm working with serving school leaders and support them in terms of the advice and support they provide to parents. And again, I have a little bit of skin in this game because I'm currently working with or negotiating for one, or trying to convince at the moment a year ahead who has a student in his year group, and he's quite happy to support her to maintain her desire to be quiet in class. She doesn't want to be asked to do anything. The parents are happy for her not to be asked to do anything because she's embarrassed by her stutter. And I mean, again, I can see the short-term logic in that, but what happens when the child is 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, wants to order a pizza, wants to go to a restaurant, and I mean, for so many of you, you know exactly what I'm talking about here and what I'm saying. And this kid, what the phrase I think is short-term gain, long-term pain. So when I speak to school leaders, this is where I'm coming from, especially when the supports are out there, especially when with lots of support, or with the right type of support, with targeted support, that child can absolutely flourish, and that kid's resilience will carry them further than everybody else, or so many more. Also, serving school leaders, ensure the awareness of the needs of young people who live with a stutter are taken into consideration. And the first one is at policy development level. And in my own school, I'm a member of the Board of Management, the Board of Governors. And every year or 2 or 3 different policies come up for review. And the idea that whenever a policy comes up for review that has a relevance for students, and has a relevance, well, they all have a relevance for students, has a relevance for the inclusion of students in learning, for their well-being, that students with stuttering, or students who stutter, are at least taken into account indirectly, if not explicitly. Explicitly is probably a bit too much to ask for, because so much more then would need to be included, but certainly that it would be taken into account there. And secondly, at a practical level. So when we're talking about a practical level, maybe surveying staff, finding out what are staff comfortable with, what do staff know, are staff familiar with approaches? So, I mean, we're very lucky we have a new principal in our college, and he is getting to know us slowly. But, would a principal consider questioning staff about their level of, I wouldn't say level of comfort, because they all might think they're comfortable, or their level, they all might think their practice is great, but what approaches would they take if they're presented with a student who stutters? So I suppose finally, working with students and parents. In Ireland, we have a children's ombudsman. So I know in some countries they have children's commissioners, and in Ireland, the ombudsman, his job is to make sure that children's rights are catered for. And you can see the government of Ireland, Rialtas na hÉireann, there's a participation framework that students are being encouraged to engage with. And it's almost like a little citizens' assembly, and I mean that when I say little, I suppose small scale. I'm not being dismissive of it. A small scale citizens' assembly where students' views are taken into account. That ombudsman is taking his job, her job. I'm not sure if it's man or woman, taking the job very, very seriously. And there are regular reports, let's say, on the news about students' views of X, Y, and Z. And so certainly I feel that for Stuttering Awareness Mental Wellbeing Ireland, and possibly for other organisations abroad as well, there's fertile ground for organisations that look after or keep in mind, or look after the educational needs of kids who live with a stutter, that to engage with their local children's commissioner or children's ombudsman, and be able to link in with them, and through them to be able to raise awareness, to be able to engage with young people who stutter, to learn their views, and I suppose to channel some of the good thinking in Article 12 of the Convention on Human Rights. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of my presentation.